All right. And now I'm a little bit. I'm better. The red and white, baby. The red and white. I gotta get my Slifer red. Wait, my Slifer red colors going on, because I don't know if you guys watched the last video I did. It was probably about a month ago, but I did a video on how I feel about Hunter x Hunter. So you know what? It was pretty cool in that video, actually. I don't know, a lot of people actually liked me talking about just how I felt about just, you know, the anime in general and just how I felt about that, which I'm probably going to do some more stuff like that in the future. But I wanted to do another video about how I felt about Yugioh GX. Now, the reason why I'm talking about Yugioh GX is because I've actually been playing a lot of Duel Links lately, and just about a month ago on the game, they had their huge Yugioh GX update, which, if you didn't know, it basically adds the Yugioh GX characters like Jaden and Alexis and Chaz, Bastion, and then they're still adding characters to the game as is. But it's one of those things where, like, I looked back on Yugioh GX, and it was honestly a lot better than what I thought it was when I was a kid. And now I know what you're probably thinking, because a lot of people love Yugioh GX. I mean, there is a whole generation of people that like it better than the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. And for me, when I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh! and I played Yu-Gi-Oh! a lot. I mean, as a kid, I played it growing up, and I watched GX, and GX was cool, but I never was really into it like I got into like 5Ds and some of the other series as I got older. But this video is really to talk about like how Jaden Yuki was probably one of the most he was very Americanized, and by what I mean by Americanized was like everything from like his character arc and his growth, and just kind of like everything down to his deck is pretty much based off of it has a lot of American influences, which you guys know that I like My Hero Academia, so you guys know that I love things with you know, I love trying to find like the American influences and just influences from other things just in general. So I want to sit down, sit tight. I'm going to talk about Jaden Yuki and his path from being a zero to a hero. I think the biggest part of it was like it was such a different Jaden Yuki was such a different character from Yugi, and I know they, you know, you make a different main character to kind of make him drastically different from the other one. But there was always something about Jaden as a kid. I was like, he's cool. I like the elemental heroes, but there was something that never really clicked with me when I was younger. But now when I've actually been rewatching a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX lately, and by God, this man was well written. So basically what I'm saying is I just really want to start back. You know what I mean? Because there's 4 seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. I want to just talk about Jaden Yuki's character, just kind of from season, and just kind of how it correlates, just kind of like how like his personality really started to correlate with a lot of American influences, and it basically, let's just take it back to just the first thing we ever really knew about Jaden, and that was the deck that he played, which was the Elemental Heroes. So the Elemental Heroes is pretty cool because I really like warrior-based decks, and I still like warrior-based decks even to this day. But his Elemental Hero deck is based off of American superheroes and American comic books in general. That was actually I forget the creator of or the guy who was like directing, or the creator of the Elemental Heroes. But basically his idea was to basically base a deck off of a comic superhero, off of comic book superheroes. That's why they're all like, you know, they all have like the super cool names, and like they have like, you know, the catchy names, and they all like based off of like a certain element and stuff like that. So it's kind of got like this Captain Planet kind of vibe, because, you know, I don't know if you noticed that, but each one of them was like a different element, except for Heart. No one cared for Heart, but they all kind of had that, that kind of niche thing going. And as we all know, Jaden Yuki's primary thing was fusion monsters. And it was cool because the whole like concept of the deck was like, the elemental heroes by themselves they were all right. I mean, if you played the game, we all know that by themselves they suck. But once you fuse them and once you fuse them and actually get the fusion monsters on the board, you were able to actually, do some plays. You actually, you were able to, make a difference as you were playing through the game. And one of the biggest things you have to take from Jaden Yuki, as far as the first season, is that comic booky influence is even dropped down to even the way he duels. And then it's always when Jaden's in that dire situation, then he pulls off the miracle win. Just kind of similar to how a whole bunch of comic book heroes will be in that dire ditch moment, and then they will just they'll do the craziest thing and they'll always spring forth the win. You see it in anything from video games, and it's super current in comic books too, even today. So basically, what I'm saying is Jaden is a parallel of his deck. And that's pretty much a running theme. But as we do know what happens to Jaden as the series goes on, is Jaden does become more aware of just kind of how cruel reality can actually be. Because you got to think he's kind of been living in a fantasy world in seasons 1 and 2, where he's kind of like, oh, okay, cool, I'm going to duel, I'm going to, if something pops up, I'm going to take care of it, I'm going to be a hero. And which is cool because, that's how he starts making friends, and that's how people start to recognize him, and people start to really, not just more appreciate him as a person, but appreciate him as kind of who he is and what he kind of stands for. Which parallels, like I said, back to a lot of comic books. I use Spider-Man, like Spider-Man. He starts off and he always stands for that, for those for those themes, and that's always a present thing through every iteration of Spider-Man since the originals. But the coolest thing about Jaden was that when it got to season 3, the writer was actually wanting to actually have Jaden really go through something, because he thought his personality was hard to really kind of develop his character, because he was such a chill, laid-back person. So season 3 is kind of when we get into the whole, as everyone infamously knows, it's this is when Jesse comes in, and this is when he really he gets to know Jesse, and him and Jesse hit it off, and they're like best friends. You know what I mean? They are. They can both see dual spirits. They both have similar attitudes. I mean honestly, if you change Jesse's hair color to brown, he looks just like Jaden. He looks just like him. I promise you. But that's all besides the point. But it starts taking a shift in tone, because Jesse does ultimately sacrifice himself to save Duel Academy, which does put, and he ends up sacrificing himself to save everybody, and Duel Academy does end up being saved, and Jaden can't accept the fact that he can't save this one person when he's saved people before. I mean, it's kind of akin to how superheroes are so used to saving people's lives, and they're so used to relying on their own abilities, because it's always pulled them through in the end. It's always pulled them through before. So what makes this time any different? So you kind of have to just remember that as we're going forward here, So he ends and we all know the story. We all know the story. If you haven't watched season 3 and 4 of Yugioh GX, do it. The really good seasons, actually. The actually the best. So, and we all know that he ends up going back into the other world, into the other dimension. Sorry, it was other world, other dimension, and to try and save Jesse. And this is kind of where the burden of becoming a hero really starts to hit Jaden hard. Because he does get obsessed with trying to find Jesse and save Jesse, to the point where he does kind of put his friends at risk Now, his friends did come back with him to the other dimension to help Jaden out. Because think about it. This is a guy that has saved people before. This is a guy who has, always pulled through in the end and has always put everyone, he's always did it for other people, So they wanted to follow him and be a part of his team, you know what I mean? And then when it does get to the point where he does start to put his other friends that he's built a relationship with through his 3 years of Duel Academy, it does start to put a strain on all of his relationships, because he basically says, I'm going to, put my other friends to the wayside to save Jesse. And we understand that Jesse is a very important and crucial character in this, at this point in the show. For the things he has done up into saving Jesse, being the Supreme King, and now that he has realized that he has done these things, he's got to try and find some kind of way to redeem himself, or the redemption part, which, like I said, going back to Spider-Man again, he does irreplaceable damage when he is using the black suit. He does start putting a damper on relationships, not only on his personal life, and as his outlook as a hero as well. So it comes to the point where Jaden, because then he learns about the origin, he remembers about Yubel and the cards that he sent up to space, and how Yubel was kind of like a bad luck thing for him as a kid, and people were staying away from Jaden because he was bad omen. He was bad juju, bro, bad juju. And Jaden doesn't even want to use fusions anymore. He doesn't even use polymerization for a little bit, because he is so ashamed of what he's done as a hero. And every hero has their downfall. And when he was the Supreme King, that was it. That was his downfall. Now we have a more mature Jaden Yuki. And this is where you understand how we've seen this character grow and mature. Because now we have a character that has kind of seen the darkness that he has, and just kind of just the crazy thing. After everything he's been through, the one thing he was passionate about, which was dueling, it's gone at this point. He doesn't kind of have a drive anymore, He's more, dueling now is just a means to an end. He'll duel and he'll end it in 2 turns because he does not enjoy it anymore. He's kind of become a ghost of his past self. You can even see that in the season 4 opening, Precious Time Glory Days, where he looks over the school, where he's standing on the roof of the school, and he looks out with with Yubel flashing in as kind of, as the signs of the pain and turmoil that he's been through, and the sacrifices he's made to try and make things right again. Not just to him, but to his friends and everyone he wronged in the previous season. And then he looks up, and then the cards that you see are Avion, Sparkman, Bubbleman, Bersenatrix, and Flame Wingman, which is a symbol of where he began as a character, and those heroes that, which, like I said, which I feel like, honestly, Jaden kind of projected himself as a hero, as what his deck stood for, a superhero. And at this point, he kind of looks, and then he looks away, because at this point, he doesn't feel like a hero anymore. He feels like a character that he's done the right thing, but because he's felt like he's wronged so many people, and and he feels like he's just a bad omen, because now he's has everything that's happened up until this point just been because of me, and me ignoring things, and me just shrugging things off, and not really being too super serious like he always was in previous seasons. And he's like, is this all my fault? He even attempts to leave Duel Academy in season 4. He tries to leave before the final episode. He tries to leave the school, and which ends up not happening. But he he's broken. He's a broken character, and he doesn't duel anymore. He actually distances himself from his friends because he does not want anything else unfortunate to befall them just because they're friends with him. He'd rather them be okay and them never hear from him again rather than him hanging around them all the time and then they constantly end up in one situation after another. Which he ultimately does start to gain a little bit of that back after he has the tag duel with Alexis, and then ultimately he gets his rekindling of dueling back when he duels not Yami Yugi, but Yugimoto himself. Which, I mean, honestly, to wrap it up, Jaden is actually a really amazing character. He's just a really in-depth character. And I know I didn't get to go over everything, but everything from, him paralleling himself with the deck. I mean, it even goes as far as I kind of feel like he wanted to kind of be like Neos, you know what I mean? That it's really good as far, I mean, it's old. Everyone's probably seen it already, especially if you're my age.